Today's session is all about successful volunteer management and retention. And Joey's very kindly joining us to share some experiences and success stories from the work that they've been doing that's had a really great impact in managing and engaging and keeping volunteers going. So yeah, the purpose is to sort of learn from Coexist and create a supported and connected space between us all, and there'll be an opportunity for some peer sharing. So we'd love to hear about your various experiences and challenges and potential opportunities. So there'll be plenty of space in the session to be able to hear a little bit more about what each other's working on, and hopefully that you'll all come away with some interesting ideas and hopefully some inspiration that you can weave into your work as well. So Joey, do you want to do a quick introduction, and then I'll introduce, well, maybe I'll introduce myself and then over to Joey. So I'm Alice, and I'm the partnerships coordinator for Bristol Good Food 2030 strategy. So I'm interim. I'm covering for Gemma, who's on maternity leave, and I'll pass over to Joey for a quick introduction.
Yeah, my name's Joey. I am the volunteer and engagement manager at Coexist, and I've been with them for 4.5 years. I joined in 2020, so from that point onwards. And yeah, I've been asked to just chat about how we manage our volunteers, how we've maybe recruited and retained them as well.
Great, thanks, Joey. So we've heard a little bit about who you are and where you are at the moment and what you're working on, but I just wondered if it might be a nice way to start if we all just shared perhaps like one sort of positive experience. It could be small, but it could be really big and impactful. It could be small and had a little bit of an impact. But if anyone might want to share one positive experience that you've had with volunteers in your work, and we can just do it popcorn style. So if you've got something that you want to share, just raise your hand or just speak aloud.
Don't want to say something before someone else being polite. You see, we're all holding back, aren't we? Shall I go first?
Oh, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, over many years of working with people who volunteer, it's just nice to hear and to see how people benefit and find it interesting and rewarding, and it's always a pleasure to sort of get new people to do new things, I suppose.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Andy. And Joey, did you have one that you wanted to share?
Just thinking, and obviously I'll speak a lot more about volunteering Coexist, but we have a few volunteers who've come through the kitchen as part of our community access workshops. So these are for people who are accessing support services, and some of them have then gone on to be volunteers in the kitchen for other services, which is like a really nice full circle system, and they're able then to maybe support others who are going through a similar thing that they were going through before. So that's like quite a nice volunteer story from our point of view.
Yeah, lovely. I might share one from a previous contract, actually, before I was at Bristol Good Food. I used to work for Marmalade Trust, and I led their Loneliness Awareness Week campaign in 2023, and really, really small charity, very, very reliant on volunteers' work. And when I was coordinating the campaign, one of the volunteers came in, and he was just he was amazing, like just fantastic energy, and used to be an accountant, so really diligent on data, and we were migrating over to a bit more of a comprehensive customer relationship management software where we could put all the contacts into one place and track our conversations. And he very diligently entered, I would say, between 200 and 400 different stakeholders, adding in numbers, adding in emails, basically data entry. And he did it with a smile, and I fed him lots of cake, and he's now a really, really active volunteer for the charity. So yeah, really, small, but had a really big impact on me, and I think for him as well.
Should I go? Just quickly. So I started as a volunteer about 2 years ago now for Springfield, and because of that, I've then been able to engage people into coming onto site. So people that live within like the Philwood estate, which has never happened in the previous 13 years that it's been run. So I just feel like that's like being the biggest thing for me, because of that new learning of something positive.
Yeah, lovely. It's inspiring by having done it yourself, doing it yourself. Yeah, lovely.
I suppose I have a similar story. I started off as a volunteer when I heard about the community garden starting, and it changed my life. I just had a complete career change after 10 years working in travel and tourism, because when you get something really special going on in your own community, you do want to be involved. And Sarah Rogers, who's the CEO of Hillfield Community Garden, has just brought so many people together. And the first thing we did was back in 2021. It was called a summer fair, but all it was like a cake stand. And we had like 200 people, and it just showed how many people do want to get involved with something really hyper local and want to make their area better. So yeah, it started off for me as a volunteer, and now I'm very fortunate enough to be in this as a paid role. So it's just amazing what can happen from a very small number of people volunteering their time to something which is quite significant.
Wow, that's really lovely, Sophie, and you're absolutely right. There's something, collective community action is contagious. Amazing. Well, perhaps, we've got Sam just coming into the lobby. That's quite good timing. So maybe we can quickly hear from Sam, if they don't mind being put on the spot, about hi Sam, whenever you're joining. Hello, nice to see you here. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm also at work, so I'm gonna be planting and listening. Is that okay?
It's more than okay, Sam.
I just didn't want to miss anything, so it's just nice to say hello.
Welcome to have you here. Really big welcome. Sam, don't want to put you on the spot, but you're totally welcome if you want to do a short introduction. Where are you from? And we've all just shared a small volunteer, a small but potentially largely impactful experience of volunteering, either yourself or a volunteer experience that you'd say is a positive one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at the moment, when I first kind of got involved with the Get Ground Trail, I was volunteering and leading the planter project at Bristol Good Community Centre. That's come to an end now, just because they're going through a massive refurbishment. So I'm currently not with anybody, but wanted to keep in touch with you guys, because I'm putting the feelers out, see where I can get involved. So and also I'm independent, so I just kind of put myself wherever I think I can be useful, rather than some other things I've done was run a community garden in Barton Hill, but that was a difficult garden to do because there wasn't really anyone that I was working with except the residents, and we were just trying to keep on top of this space that was constantly getting neglected and filled with rubbish and all sorts. But what I find the most I love sharing practical gardening skills. I think more people can do with them. I think we've lost touch a little bit, and I know that this is growing again now, this need to get outside and grow your own food, just being back in touch with nature, putting your hands in the soil. It's really good for people. And so I really like kind of getting involved and showing people how to do it. And the benefit I got from it was just the kind of camaraderie you have when you're working with other people and volunteers, and just seeing the joy, the fulfillment from other people and how they've really benefited from it. And it's always positive feedback. There's never, I don't think I've ever experienced anyone that's had a bad time going out and doing a bit of gardening or getting involved and growing their own. Or I think it's always been positive, apart from, you know, maybe it's a bit rainy today and cold, you know, but who cares? I'm out in it today and it's actually not that bad. So most of the time it's positive, and I just I enjoy helping people, and if even if it's just one person, yeah. So that's the thing, really. That's what I like doing.
Lovely, Sam. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, real just testament to how having your fingers in the soil, you know, it benefits you, it benefits the soil, and it benefits those that you're sharing that experience with.
Yeah.
Great. So just a really quick one, sort of structure of today. I'm going to hand over to Joey in just a moment, who's going to talk us through a brilliant case study of Coexist Community Kitchen, the success they've had with volunteers. And then we'll have a bit of space, about 25 minutes, just for some peer sharing, for you all just to tell us a bit about your projects. Maybe we'll talk through some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and just listen to each other and reflect and yeah, hear what's going on in your world of work and see how we can support each other through that. And then we'll wrap up at the end. Sam, we are recording the call, just because there's quite a few people that weren't able to join but wanted to be able to view the session afterwards. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, that's fine. I might put myself on mute, only because of background noise, like cars passing and things like that. So I'm at the front of someone's property, so it's a busy-ish road. So
Yeah,
I'll just do that.
fine.
All right, okay.
Lovely, cool. Thanks, Sam. Joey, if you're able to, you know, are you okay for me to pass over to you now and tell us a bit more about your work?
Yeah, great. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got like just a short presentation, just I thought it would be good to have a few pointers rather than me just talk at you. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Let's get it up. Okay, can everyone see this one okay?
Cool. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Joey.
Great. Yeah, so I was asked to do a little bit of a talk on volunteering at Coexist Community Kitchen. I think, like a lot of you who've spoken, I actually started as a volunteer and then gradually went from 1 day to 3 to 4 to 5. So I think it's quite nice that often people who end up working for an organisation have often volunteered for it before, and I think that's quite a nice way of going about it. I'm just going to start a little bit, for those who don't know about us, just a very short snapshot into the Coexist Community Kitchen. So Coexist Community Kitchen actually started in 2012 and was in Hamilton House in Stokes Croft. At that point, it was a much smaller operation. It was part of a much wider Coexist group, which included artists, musicians. So it was run by 2 people at that point. And yeah, it was within Hamilton House. Everyone got evicted in 2018. So Ari and Claudia, Ari is the founder and Claudia was working with her at the time, decided that they needed to carry on what Coexist was doing. And so kind of separated. That's when Coexist Community Kitchen registered itself as its own entity as a CIC in 2019. Found the space that we're in now in Myvart Studios, Myvart Street in Easton, so just off St. Mark's Road. And that's where we've been ever since. I think, so having spoken with Ari, volunteers weren't as a large part of the kitchen during the Hamilton House era, but from 2020, so just after opening the doors to the public in January 2020, obviously we know what happened in March 2020. But actually that's when I joined, Coexist started having volunteers, because quite overnight the things that we were doing changed. So we weren't doing as many cookery out courses, obviously due to social distancing. And so we were doing emergency food provision at that time, and having a small amount of people to do that meant that we could deliver 600 meals a week. And So that's kind of like when it started in March 2020 was when volunteers started coming a bit more regularly. And I would say through that time, the kitchen has grown. The staff members have gone from 2 to 6, which is still a small team, but it's obviously a large growth. And our output has then also massively increased. So we continue to do our community meals on a Wednesday, so free meals for those facing food insecurity. But we also now recruit volunteers for all of our community outreach classes, for all our public classes and events, and also have a board of directors who are also volunteers. So going from having 5 volunteers or so, 5 to 10 in 2020, we now have 281 on our volunteer contact list. And then the most recent figures based on our 2023 impact report show that we've got, in 2023 alone, 114 people volunteered, and many of them will have volunteered multiple times. And that equates to 1,792 hours. And we've had 84 new volunteer sign-ups in 2023 alone. So that's kind of where we're going. It's gone from quite quick growth, I guess. So when talking about volunteer recruitment, as I said, we started attracting volunteers during the COVID pandemic. There's quite a few reasons for this. I think obviously that's quite a unique situation. A lot of people wanted to help. A lot of people were on furlough, they were unemployed. And I think despite not having loads of volunteers in Hamilton House during that time, a lot of people knew about the kitchen. So we have got the benefit, I would say, of being an organisation that has operated in Bristol for over 12 years now. And word of mouth really has kind of taken a world of its own in terms of volunteers getting in touch with us. There's not been as much of a volunteer push, but I do think that is just due to having such a long period of time working with and supporting so many people over the years. That said, we've made our volunteer recruitment process itself much more streamlined. So on our website, it's quite clear. If you go on a Google or a web search and you type in Coexist Community Kitchen, the volunteer part of our website is very easy to access from the get-go. And so I think that helps for people. And I have asked a lot of new volunteers how they found out about us, and some of them said, I literally just typed in community kitchen volunteer and we come up first in that search. It was something I also spoke with Mally when she interviewed me, that's saying, I do think there's also quite a unique draw of volunteering in a kitchen, especially a community kitchen setting. A lot of people, there's quite a historical role of community kitchen volunteering. And some people do get in touch asking if we're a soup kitchen, which is something that obviously we don't really refer to anymore, but it's that kind of, there's a historical role in people's minds that how can I help the community? I could cook in a kitchen. So I think we do have that as like a support for us. But other ways that we have recruited people, as I said at the beginning of the session, some of the participants who come to our community cookery classes and also our public cookery classes asked to volunteer, which is fantastic because it's a way that they've been involved in the kitchen. They want to continue their involvement, maybe perhaps after the courses have finished. And we also host regular community events involving people literally within the Eastern community, but also all of our partner organisations that we work with as well. Options for smaller organisations who potentially have fewer resources, or they're just newer and they just don't have 10 years worth of contacts. I would say social media. It's a really effective way of advertising that you have volunteers and you can showcase what that looks like for people, but also that you want volunteers. A lot of people use social media every day, so it's a very good, quick and easy way of doing that. But you've also got to think of other ways, because obviously not everyone is on social media. Creating clear and easy accesses via websites is a really simple way of doing that. It also streamlines all that information, so perhaps you can move away from WhatsApp groups, because we also started off in the WhatsApp group situation, which can get, once it grows, it can get quite chaotic. And also having a WhatsApp group with many people in it is also not always the most fun for everyone involved. So I would say if you can streamline to a system where the data is then the name, the contact, everyone's given their consent, it's all then in an Excel spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, whatever it is, it keeps it a lot more easier to manage. And yeah, here I say it, just the last point, when you're encouraging for volunteers, you want to encourage as many as possible from as many different viewpoints and life experiences as possible, because if volunteers come, they can offer all their own different experiences, but they also, if they have a great time, they will spread the word and it will kind of grow organically that way. So the next point is on volunteer retention, but I kind of also, retention for me kind of comes from care, so volunteer care management essentially. And we're very lucky that we've got a very large network now of long and short-term volunteers. And some people will volunteer for a few weeks because they are, perhaps they finished studying and they're applying for jobs, or they're or are on maternity leave and feel like they want to come back into the community before they return to a job, anything like that. But we also have long-term volunteers, and some people have been volunteering with us for 3 or 4 years now, and they volunteer twice a month and they just continuously come. And it's all quite common sense and stuff that I'm sure you're all doing. It's just making the space nice. It's a nice, welcoming space to be in. Whenever someone comes through the door, they feel welcomed and you know, respected and valued. We also make sure that there's quite clear communication. So new volunteers will receive the volunteer handbook so that they can fully understand what the role is and what, you know, what they can expect from us and what we expect from them. And then once volunteers come, I guess there's more, I guess, tangible care packages, I guess you could call them, or rewards or whatever. So, you know, everyone who volunteers gets a 20% discount on items in our shop. We also run cookery classes by some of the kitchen team members. So most of us who work in the team have previously worked as chefs or bakers, so we can teach classes that are in our field. So, for example, fish masterclass, fermenting and pickling. We've had bread baking, and these are put on for volunteers only. So, you know, we'll have a class of 12 volunteers, they sign up and they can have their own class. We also run volunteer parties and socials. So we run 2 larger ones a year, one in the winter in January. So our next one's on January the 9th. It's kind of a post-festive, post maybe Christmas chaos time, and we invite everyone to come to our kitchen, and the team makes a nice big meal. We provide drinks, and it's basically we you know, we want to use that as a time to thank everyone, and all the volunteers get a little homemade goodie bag. And then we have a social in the summer. There's a picture there of a picnic if the weather's nice, that we run often in like a nearby park. Again, we provide the food, we bring music, games, drinks, and it's just a chance for people to get together and hopefully, you know, for us to say thank you. You know, we really appreciate everything that you do for the kitchen. And then in between all that, we have smaller parties and socials throughout the year. If ever there's a kitchen event going on, all the volunteers are invited. And the final 2 points I'd say is it's really important that all the team members in the kitchen, whether or not they work in the kitchen or whether they work in the office, they get to know the volunteers. Everyone knows everyone by name. You know, you get to know people, you build connections, you know what's going on in their lives. And as you can see, there's a birthday cake. You know, it's those sort of things that it's important that people really, the volunteers really feel that they are part of the kitchen, because they are. And finally, we have the kitchen holds quarterly steering groups. So these are like member-led groups where people are paid for their time to kind of offer guidance or ideas on how we move forward as an organisation. And we invite people from all different aspects of the kitchen, including volunteers, as well as community class participants, people who receive free meals, people who hire the kitchen, loads of different areas of the kitchen. And so I just wanted to continue that point. We do have 4 different, I guess, categories of volunteers, and this is again grown a bit organically. So the first category would be the community meals volunteers, and this is the volunteers role that started back in 2020. So they help prepare our weekly free meals on a Wednesday. So for these volunteers, everyone gets to eat together or eat lunch all together every Wednesday, and then after regularly volunteering for a year, they receive either a chef's knife or a class or event voucher of their choosing. And then we've also got some other types of volunteering roles. So we've got community class volunteers. So these people support our community outreach workshops. So for this, it's a slightly different role. We do require a bit more commitment as they are working with potentially vulnerable individuals. So we conduct a DBS. And because this role does require a bit more responsibility, we make sure that after 6 months, they also receive class vouchers. Public class volunteers. So we offer public cookery classes, as I mentioned. So one kitchen team will lead these. They often happen about once or twice a month. So we ask for volunteers in exchange for taking part in the class, which retails at £55. They then stay behind at the end to help the kitchen lead clean down the kitchen. So that's a bit more like almost like a direct exchange in a way. And then we have directors. So we've got 5 people on the board of directors, 6 people actually now on the board of directors. And 2 of them are team members, so myself and Ari, but the rest are volunteers. So they are also offered free tickets to an event once a year. And they're of course invited to all the volunteer socials and parties. So it's a tricky one, I think, balancing volunteer needs. I'd say clearly we have quite a high demand. As I said, about 15 to 20 people will get in touch with me a week asking to volunteer. This is fantastic, but of course there's only so many places and only so much we can offer. So it's always trying to think about a balance between the volunteer needs and supporting them and the organizational needs. So for this reason, we have now said no to corporate volunteer days. In our experience, this is something that we learned. It was more beneficial to have our volunteers who are used to the kitchen and gain much more continue than have a whole new group of people who perhaps have never set foot in a community kitchen. And it requires a lot more organisation, when actually, if they're a corporate volunteer, we offer them something alternative. We can say we can host you for a community cooking class that your organisation can pay for, and we can talk to you about the kitchen. So it's balancing the needs there. And in this case, we prioritise our regular volunteers' needs. When receiving these high numbers, it's tricky because obviously you want to say yes to most people. But the way that we navigate it is to be very clear in our communication. So everyone who gets in touch will receive an email from me with all the information. And if all the dates are filled, I will say that. I'll let them know when next dates will be coming available. But I will also signpost them to other organisations that I know of in the area that are looking for volunteers. So as like a compromise, I said, in the sense, if there's no space at the time in our kitchen. So it's important, as I said, to think of our needs as well as the volunteers, and a way of trying to balance holding space for regular volunteers and also providing space for potential new volunteers. We've introduced some limits. So for example, for the community meal volunteers, we limit volunteering sessions to 2 times a month. So they can either come 2 weeks in a row or fortnightly. And that just allows for space for other people who want to check it out and maybe don't have the time to commit to as much, but still want to be included. Yeah, that's probably that on the needs. Lessons learned, and these are just, I want to highlight, these are just some of the challenges. I'd say there's obviously lots of lessons have been learned throughout the years. So as I mentioned before, trying to balance holding space for regular volunteers and including new ones, trying to find the right balance in terms of volunteer numbers. In our situation, which is a kitchen environment, it's quite a large kitchen, but it's still limited in terms of space. Having too many people for a session is overwhelming and can be counterproductive for those involved. It can be quite stressful, and it also means that people feel like they might not have enough to do. Last minute cancellations, that is just part and parcel, I think, of you know, having volunteers as part of your organisation. And it's also totally understandable because, you know, you have to remember that people are giving up their time and their energy for free. And if a work commitment or a family or anything comes up, it's absolutely understandable that that, you know, their priorities shift. And I would say another challenge, I guess, is making sure that we're providing volunteer roles that are suitable for everyone. Which means increasing the accessibility to volunteering in the kitchen. So some of the solutions or learnings that we've come up with, and I'd say it's a continuous learning process. So as I said before, when offering sessions, creating a volunteering cap for the regular volunteers to always leave space for new ones. Trial and error. You only know there's too many volunteers when it's too many. If that is the case, in our situation of being in a kitchen where, you know, we're producing food, creating recipes, we always will have backup tasks that can be done that are by no means a priority, but if they get done, fantastic. So that could be using up excess ingredients to create a pickle, anything like that, that, you know, you can give to someone to do, but also if it doesn't get done, it's by no means the end of the world. So I know that a lot of organisations, volunteers are critical and they're highly important for us as well. That said, it's hard to put yourself in a position where you're relying entirely on volunteers for that event or class or programme to run. If possible, we try to avoid that situation. And one way of doing this is, number one, always having one more person than needed, so that, especially, let's say we're going into the winter season where there's much more illness going around, I will schedule a few more people with the thoughts that a few people will cancel, and generally they do. But if anything is highly important that it gets done, and you're seeing that volunteers are dropping out for whatever reason, you need to make sure that you have someone else, whether that's another paid member of staff, to make sure that happens. I'd say avoid relying entirely on volunteers for something that absolutely has to happen. But that said, of course, volunteers are super reliable. It's just life can sometimes get in the way. And then talking about the accessibility and support needs, I was receiving quite a lot of requests from support workers for people they were supporting with higher support needs to come in and volunteer in the kitchen, which is fantastic and a really great way for them to maybe get more involved in the community. In that sense, I would always talk to the person involved and their support workers to really explain the situation, because as I said, the kitchen's a really fun place to be in. It can be quite overwhelming for some people. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of noise, it's quite warm, a warm environment, which can be triggers for some people. So we created a space each week for volunteers with higher support needs to be able to come and volunteer and make sure there's enough space so that their support worker can come as well. And we offer this up on like 6 monthly rotation basis. So after 6 months, if this person still is really enjoying coming and benefiting coming, we won't ask them to leave. But if they feel like they're ready to move on, we then free up that space for someone else with higher support needs as well. And then as an alternative to that as well, we actually created a new open access cookery class for people with higher support needs to come which was really successful because it turned out that a lot of people who came found that environment a lot more calm. It was a much more structured teacher-led session, and actually suited their needs and what they wanted more than perhaps coming to the free community meals volunteering session. So I guess it's what I'm trying to say is, if there's a demand and you realize you're not doing something, it's creating that space and also offering an alternative for people. Yeah, I guess just to kind of finish up on this, advice for volunteer retention and recruitment. Get the volunteers in, broaden your circle. The more people who join, the greater the word of mouth, and volunteers can be your ally and your voice within communities. So yeah, just try and get as many people in as possible. As I mentioned before, social media can be useful to get things off the ground, especially if you're a newer organisation. And I think the key thing is to always remind yourself that volunteers are integral and they are so important to your organisation, and you need to make sure that they know that. And sometimes you might feel like a bit of a broken record saying these things to them and emailing, but actually it's so important that they do feel valued and they realise how thankful you are for all their support. I would say the volunteer care and management, it doesn't need to be expensive, but it does need to be inclusive. It needs to be proactive. You do have to plan and put dates in the diary and let people know for whatever care you're going to do, whether that's a social, whether that's a crafternoon, whatever it is, you need to proactively organize it and make it fairly regular. It doesn't have to be every month by any means, and that's unrealistic, but at least having dates set in the diary for the year where you can make sure that volunteers feel valued and appreciated is really, really important. And throughout the whole volunteer journey with you, clear, regular communication is key, so that there's no misunderstandings within their role and your role, or perhaps any boundaries that can be set. But yeah, that is me. I'm sorry, I feel like I've spoken for a long time, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks so much, Joey. What a wealth of nuggets of advice. So many things in there that may seem obvious or may seem completely new, but feel very valuable to keep volunteers interested and track them and keep them continually engaged. So yeah, really, thanks so much, Joey, for preparing that and sharing those nuggets of wisdom. So we're back to the room. Before we dive into hearing a little bit more about your projects and thinking about perhaps any challenges that you're working on, did anyone have any questions for Joey just from that presentation? I think that they might want to ask or to share. Yeah, Andy, you've got your hand up. Fire away.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's very interesting. You mentioned about getting people from a range of different backgrounds. Do you find you attract volunteers of different ages? Because we've, to identify something that we struggle with, we're quite different actually. The Community Orchard is very grassroots. It's not a CIC. It's very grassroots volunteer. It's kind of, I might discuss this later. We don't know quite what we are at the moment. There's a bit of an identity crisis, but we're trying to think about that. And we are moving towards more structured engagement of volunteers and trying to think about how we get people in, but we can't seem to attract, maybe this is something about the area, but we can't seem to attract anyone who's not in their 30s to early 40s with kids and full-time jobs and loads of responsibilities and very little time, who try and help as much as they can, but really we want to reach some people who potentially have, not always, but potentially have a bit more time, be that retired, be that long-term unemployed, be that people who want to contribute and do something, but we just can't seem to find them. And we use social media, but we're perhaps missing something, I think.
Yeah, I think so. We benefit from having access to quite a large pool of people through our charity partners. So we have charity partners through our community cookery classes, and so whenever there's a role coming up, we ask them to share it. I understand that it doesn't quite work in your situation. I think it would definitely be a case of sharing your message, perhaps with places like Bristol Good Food, Feeding Bristol, that there's those roles going on, and having an open day, hosting open days. But it does take, I think, especially when it's grassroots and it's fairly small or new, it takes a lot of actually going out to places, so that, you know, and it's knowing where to go, and it's going out to different community groups, probably within your area, to make it more accessible for people who don't have to travel so far. But there's a lot of outreach that you have to do, and having really clear, easy visuals and posters that people can, and like contacts that people can then, if they see something, they can be like, okay, great, I'll just check that out. I'd say is really helpful. And that's what we've done before for some of our community cookery classes, where we're like, okay, we're not actually reaching this certain demographic. Why is this? And it's because they don't know about it. So we have to go to them rather than them come to us. I hope that answers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it reminds me of more responsibility of sort of getting the word out in different ways, you know, in different groups, and probably networking more than we do currently.
I have something. Yeah, you can hear me. I've turned my mic on. You can hear me. Yeah. So I suppose it's kind of similar to what you said about trying to attract volunteers, but I like to volunteer my services. So it's kind of the reverse. Is it good for me to just? There's a lot of the volunteering roles that I've been involved in. I've been asked to do. Whether it's leading projects, whatever. And now like I said, the Philwood Community Plans project's coming to an end. In the new year, I'd like to get involved in things. Is it worth me just kind of almost like sending out a CV to community projects, saying, look, this is what I can do, this is what I'd like to help with, are you interested? One thing I have in mind is, and I'm going to do some more training next year, is to become a counsellor or therapist through using gardening. You know, horticulture therapist, growing your own things. But an idea I have is garden talk, and it's not necessarily talking about gardening, although we can, but it's about having a chat whilst gardening and kind of focusing on whatever it is that's going on. You know, someone just needs a one-on-one chat whilst doing something. I feel sometimes it's good. People open up a little bit more whilst they're creating things, you know, like you join crafting groups, you sit around, you're drawing and making stuff, and you'll kind of just start to relax and chat, and it's emotionally, it helps, and so those are the kind of things I'd like to offer, especially when I'm a little bit more trained in that area.
I would say, oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, thanks.
No, I would say it's always worth speculatively reaching out to places and saying, I've got this skill set, I've got this experience.
Yeah.
Or even if you don't, just being like, is there any way I can volunteer my time? Because I think is never a bad thing for an organisation.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have the space, they can say no, but they might signpost you to somewhere else that does. So I'd say it's worth it.
Oh, great, thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'd like to ask into the details of the Google form or whatever you put on your website. So I think we do need to do something like that and move off of WhatsApp. Just the technicalities of it. How did you go about that? Was that something you set up, and do you just use Excel or Google, or do you have a software?
Yeah, so our sign up form on our website is operated through Squarespace. Mm-hmm. So we set up the form like that so that any person who emails me will come to my email. Mm-hmm. I then reply to them with all the information, and I ask them specifically if they'd like to be added to the volunteer contact list. Once I've had that consent from them, we use MailChimp as our communications software. So then I will add them to MailChimp so that everyone is then in the volunteer group. And I would say it does makes it a lot easier to communicate with people. You can also then add different tabs so that if they're a different type of volunteer, it's easy then to group it like that.
Okay, great. That's a good start. Thank you, Joey. That was a really interesting presentation. It all sounds great. I've done a My Grateful course.
Nice.
I know a little bit about it, but yeah, we're just about to take over a community centre here in Hillfields. And one thing which people wanted was to do batch cooking. So I'm sure we'll be like looking at what you do as ideas for what we could do in a small way.
Yeah.
That was really useful, Joey, about thinking about what that process is for volunteer from a sort of a technical angle. I have popped some prompts in the chat. Feel free to explore them or ignore them. What strategies have worked well for you in engaging volunteers? How do you support and retain volunteers in your own projects? And another one, what challenges are you facing, and can the group help support you? And Andy, I can see you got your hand up, so yeah, fire away.
I was just going to give one tip to Sophie with my work hat on, since I'm at work, is if you get a form together, you can do a lot of this stuff for free, like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, but get your privacy policy up together at the same time. And that, some people find that sort of thing quite scary, but actually it's quite simple. It's just a case of saying, do I collect this information? Do we need? And I guess if you're talking about personal, if someone has personal needs, it suddenly becomes quite personal information then. And as long as you've got a routine where you delete it when they don't volunteer in the end, then you'll be safe. So I think they get that right at the beginning, otherwise you'll have a headache in sort of 6 years time. You go, I've got all this stuff that I don't want, so yeah, anyway, that was just a tip. In terms of our challenges, I think retention's a challenge. And I've got some, I'm glad you mentioned some things about welcome pack and information pack, because we had our AGM the other day, and I suddenly thought, yeah, we've got like policies and we've got things that people need to know, and they come along for their first session, we sort of waffle at them if they're lucky and sort of tell them a load of stuff, and then and a lot of it's common sense, but actually we need a sort of welcome pack. And so I think we might go down that route, and it sort of confirmed some thinking that we were doing to sort of get more clear information, and maybe from that you'd start to get the kind of idea of what is expected or what we need, and getting needs, making it transparent, because we have a lot of people who come along, and they have an interest, and they seem to enjoy it, and then you might not ever see them again, and it's sort of, it's tricky to sort of, it's quite it's quite exhausting to kind of keep trying to find new people all the time, but yeah, thank you for putting the link on. I'll have a look at that.
I think it's also worth saying, because obviously everyone works in different organisations and in different roles, it's worth talking to some volunteers, especially if they've only come for a session or two. It's like, what did you want to do? What do you want to do? And that's why it's like balancing balancing the needs of volunteer in the organisation, because sometimes people might want to do something that actually you can't offer them to do as a volunteer. It's just not suitable. And but then once you know that, you can communicate that and maybe see, okay, what else might you be interested in? Does that, yeah? Because I think sometimes you're like, volunteers might expect or want to do something that's not the role. And but if you can communicate that and understand, maybe, okay, but a lot of people have now said they really want to do, I don't know, potting plants or whatever it is, but they don't want to be doing watering and weeding. Obviously there's a level of being like, there's a certain amount of things that need to get done at the end of the day, and you can be transparent about that. But I think it is trying to meet everyone in the middle and make sure that everyone's doing something they want to be doing.
Just two things on that, Joey. One, I think that link might have some privacy settings restricted on it. But just riffing on your point really about asking volunteers what they're interested in, I imagine that is probably quite helpful from a process point of view of like allocation of different roles and responsibilities, because you can then start forming various categories of interest amongst volunteers, and that could then feed into your process of assigning different tasks to those different categories, and yeah, help to sort of streamline things in the future. Just yeah, thinking aloud there.
Yeah,
we've probably got time for, sorry Joey.
Sorry, hopefully I've changed the settings, so hopefully you can see the second link.
Oh, that's great. I'll definitely share that. I was going to ask you if you could speak a little bit to what your handbook's like. So yeah, that's really great to see that example. We've got a couple of minutes left. Has anyone got a last final burning question that they'd like to share with the room, with Joey, with each other?
I've got, can I ask one thing?
Sorry, Andy, you go.
Okay, I was just going to ask about Coexist, and has it always had a central sort of income stream away from volunteering, and is that the sort of spine of it that keeps everything going?
The income stream is an interesting one, isn't it? So since being CIC, we get about 45% of our income self-generated, and that comes from catering and kitchen hires. And then the rest comes from grants and funding at the moment. And this is something we're opening a new kitchen, an additional catering kitchen, to hopefully shift away the reliance on funding. Volunteers, in terms of us being able to deliver we don't use volunteers for any of our profit-making activities. And I think that's something I didn't mention in the slide, and something that is worth noting is that it's being very, very clear in your communication when you're asking someone to volunteer, and then if you're asking someone if they then start freelance working for you. For example, we sometimes have freelance chefs come and help us with events, but in that capacity, basically, if anything is profit generating, we rarely use volunteers. Sometimes volunteers want to help with the front of house of our events because they get to attend the event and sit down and eat the food. But if anyone was actually working the event and in the kitchen, they'd be paid. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
So really useful distinction. And Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's just a quick one for Sophie. I've been meaning to pop up to Hillfield Community Garden for a while because she seems to do so much. Are you the point of contact?
Yes, I can be. Yeah, that's
okay,
my role. Would you like my email address? I can send you a message, or maybe just put it in the chat here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
And thank you, Joey. Thank you, Alice. Nice to meet you, Andy. And the other lady, but I can't see you on the screen. Nice to meet you too.
Jasmine actually had to drop out, but yeah, she popped a message in the chat just saying that she had to leave early. But thank you, Joey. That was really, I feel like I've come away with lots of learnings from that, and really practical advice actually, and you know, may seem common sense, but it's just really thinking about, yeah, how can you support, how can you identify volunteers' interests and needs, how to streamline the process, how to promote it, collaborating, working with partners, you know, community organisations to help get the word out. So yeah, lots of really useful nuggets and learnings there, and really interesting to hear about all of your community projects as well, and what sort of things and challenges you're facing. So I hope it's been useful to everyone here, and a really big thank you to Joey for your time, and wishing you all the best with your projects. And again, you know, just message me if you think of something. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Is there a challenge you're facing? Just let me know, and you know, hopefully we can organize more of these webinars to support your journeys in the future.
Thank you, Alice.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much.